So what is going on, everybody? I'm still a bit recovering, but I'm pretty much back into normal training routine now. I'm trying to get my strength back up to where it used to be. But anyways, I wanted to talk about forearms in this video. Specifically, I'm gonna give you about 5 mistakes you can do for your forearms or so. Maybe there's like actually no 6 mistakes you can do for your forearms. And I'm just gonna go over some of the things I've noticed you can do by learning and from my own experience. So let's get to it. So number one would be relying on grip movements and other movements such like the pull-up, like doing normal neutral grip pull-ups and things like that, or relying on just like deadlift, like doing mixed grip or normal grip, just to try and do forearm hypertrophy through deadlifts or something like rows and just holding on to stuff that's like heavy and everything. It can work to an extent, but if you really want hypertrophy for your forearms, like it can be a supplement, but it's not really the main driver of the growth. Just because you do these other movements where you use your grip, it is going to enhance your grip strength, but don't expect to see like insane forearm gains unless you just have really good genetics from these movements. Honestly, I would not expect it. Some people might give the advice that you can gain hypertrophy and you can to an extent, but I would say if you're at that intermediate level, if you just run really big forearms, it's not going to happen through like holding on to your deadlift or doing a few reps. It's just not going to make a difference unless you're doing specific type of variations with those deadlifts that makes it way harder for the forearms, and you're specifically targeting the forearm. It's not going to make a difference. Now I'm going to go over the variety of ways that you can train your forearms, and the number one mistake with that thing. Now tip 2 would be lacking in isolation movements. So if you're not doing any isolation movements, your forearms, and you're again relying on these grip movements, then you're not going to see hypertrophy gains, because a lot of movements for the forearms, like the curls, different holds and whatever extensions, there's so many variety of uses for the forearm and the way you can use it depending on your wrist angle and everything, and the way you're holding onto the weight, that it's just not possible to have big forearms unless you isolate them. Even the people with the best genetics usually need to isolate the forearms to get massive growth, even though they might get more growth than the average person. If you have good genetics, you still have to train. Like, you just can't escape it. The best arm wrestlers and everything, these guys train it hard every week. Again, you need isolation. So now we get into the variety in forearms and the training. Again, you have holds, extensions, curls. You have different methods of doing these things. Like, you can use a towel, you could use a fat grip. Again, the bar thickness as well, it makes a huge difference for forearm hypertrophy, because the harder it is to hold on to it, obviously the more hypertrophy you can get. So again, this goes to the first point with the grip movements, like the deadlift. You could technically add fat bars or fat grips to a deadlift and make it way harder. A lot of people that really specialize in forearms do that, and they get great gains from it, and they do it the same with their curls. And if you want some easy ways to get some extra hypertrophy gains for your forearms and you're really serious about forearms, get some fat grips, apply it to your pull-ups. So do your pull-ups with fat grips, do your maybe some of your curls with fat grips, do any movement where you can pretty much throw fat grips, just throw it on. Other than, I wouldn't recommend with the deadlifts unless you're really serious about it and you care that much. I don't personally like doing deadlifts for that reason. Like forearm hypertrophy, I think that's a bit too far. I don't care. I think for most people what you need is maybe some kind of holds, extensions, curls, maybe some usage of fat grips. And then you can also apply captain crushers if you have those. So like crushing, you can do that. And that's pretty much all the variety you would possibly need for doing forearm hypertrophy. For an average person, you can always go a little bit more advanced and really get into the nitty-gritty details, maybe try some arm wrestling strategies and things like that. But I personally don't believe you need that much. If you're the average person just trying to get big forearms, you don't need an insane amount of variety. just some of the core movements that are really good, like extensions and curls are really good, and the holds. Those are like I would say my top 3 for forearm gains. Now some volume mistakes. So this is tip 4. Volume mistakes for the forearms. I find a lot of people have either you can do too much, because too much can lead to a lot of overuse issues. So if you do too much like Captain Crushers every day and you don't let any rest days between and you're just always doing Captain Crushers, you're going to have some kind of an overuse injury. I've actually seen some cases and heard of some cases from people where they had an overuse injury because of overdoing stuff with those, if you're addicted to it. So just be careful with overuse, just like with anything. Like a lot of people treat forearm volume in a way where they can do it all the time. Yes, your forearms can take a lot of damage because they're very resilient and they recover fast, but like chill out with the everyday volume, because you might end up hurting yourself and then you can't train forearms anymore. So you probably want to stay healthy rather than destroy your forearms for some gains. So just manage the volume, have rest days. I would say when you're starting out, even 2 times a week is enough. Just do a few sets, maybe 3-4 sets. Start out with a couple of times a week of like maybe just some curls, and then start adding in movements over time as you get stronger, and just that way you can level up. And I'd say a lot of times when it comes to volume and forearms, like again, a lot of movements can affect the forearms, so you have to kind of look at your programming and the way you're doing things to see how much volume you need, and that's very individual, and everybody can handle a different amount of volume, and that increases with training age as you get better. So that's the way I would think about volume for forearms. But the main mistake I would say is either doing too much or just not doing anything at all. A lot of people do that. Maybe some people do too little. But I would say also there's a good middle ground to achieve, where it's like the forearms can take a lot of damage, so don't treat them as like a baby, but don't also go overboard like every day. So have some rest, but also do volume, because forearms can handle a lot of volume, and they can handle a lot of intense volume where you go to failure a lot, because it just recovers incredibly quickly because it's something you use every day. So take that in mind. I'm just gonna go over overuse and technique. So with technique in the forearms, if you're doing wrist curls, let's say with like a normal bar like this, instead of doing one hand at a time with a dumbbell, what's gonna happen is you might get overuse injuries in your wrists. That's pretty common, is getting wrist curls and then getting wrist problems from that. I find doing some kind of a band movement, I can actually make a video on this probably at some point, some band movements for forearms. Just a quick video, try to record some of those at the gym. But doing like a band movement for your forearms is going to help keep your wrist healthy. But if you want to avoid overuse and technique problems, I would say just do wrist curls with one dumbbell in one hand, because I find that that's very freeing for your range of motion, and your technique is more free and more comfortable, so you can get better hypertrophy, and I feel that you can isolate better and go better to failure with one hand at a time with a dumbbell compared to doing it on the bar, basically. So that would be my recommendation. Otherwise, for technique, just take it slow, go to failure a lot of time, and remember to go all the way up and all the way down so you get the best range of motion, and don't like do those small reps, and don't like fake the reps where you're doing partials, because a lot of people do partials because forearms can be kind of easy to cheat. So just remember to focus on technique a lot, because it helps a lot with hypertrophy. You're gonna miss out if you don't do the full range of motion on the wrist curl. And honestly, just the last tip, 6th tip, be patient. Forearms take a lot of time to grow, like years, especially if you don't have great genetics. Patience, and be in a bulk, because otherwise you're not going to make gains with your arms if you're not bulking. So that's pretty much the last tips, patience and bulk. And that's pretty much the 6 tips. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching.